Good morning, Lord Darzi.
Morning, President.
And it's very nice early morning in London, and to have this. I'm very much looking forward for our discussions about the future of healthcare, medicine, surgery, new technologies, artificial intelligence, and you name it. And you are absolutely the right person to do that. And of course, our conversation, this dialogue is for our conference that is going to start on the 3rd of December in Singapore, which our organization Advance Tomorrow Atom is doing with the National University of Singapore, and especially with the medical school and the hospital of National University, which is focusing on life, health, well-being, health, longevity, and so on and so forth. And you being one of the greatest servants of healthcare, if I may call you like that, worldwide, not only in Britain, someone that is very well known not only in UK but in the United States, Japan, in the Gulf and elsewhere, in my own native Armenia. I would like to start our dialogue on sort of a very important and painful issues that we are going to basically see in the future. Sure. And I would like our dialogue to be focusing on future, sure, rather than today's problems. Sure. We know that today's problems, they are worldwide. And which one is among many problems in healthcare or medical space you will identify one of the most important ones?
Well, firstly, thank you very much, President Sarkissian, for having me with you on a beautiful day in London, and apologies to my colleagues in NUS. I have many, many friends in the National University of Singapore. I've collaborated with them for many, many years. They are remarkable people and what they've achieved in their own country in such a short time. So apologies, I won't be with you.
Maybe next one.
Maybe next one, absolutely. So, you know, health has many, many challenges. And I think the biggest challenge we've seen recently was obviously the COVID-19 pandemic. And, you know, I always say quality should be the organizing principle of any health system. The problem with quality, it's a moving target. It's a moving target because of innovation, because of science, because of disruption. So let me just share some of there's not a structured way of answering your question. Let's share with you some of the ideas and some of the work I'm doing at the moment. One of which is we're approaching the centenary of the discovery of one of the most important drugs ever discovered in the history of mankind. It's a drug which we all know the name of, called penicillin. That happened in 1928. And we're just about to approach 2028, which is the 100 years. And it's astonishing if you go back in history, because just imagine a world in which a simple infection cannot be treated and you die from a simple infection.
I think we would not be here.
That's right, absolutely. So what's happening, sadly, by 2028, over the 100 years, many of our antibiotics, the bacteria are becoming resistant to them. And for all sorts of reasons, I think the most important reason, which is another British scientist talked about many, many years ago, Darwin, is the process of evolution. So bacteria are developing resistance. And by the way, these tiny bugs have been around for billions of years, 3.5 billions. They were here before we existed. And the reason they've survived, because they are able to mutate and develop resistance. That has created a serious threat to humanity, because this year, for example, 1.2 million people are dying from infections which are resistant to any antibiotics. So,
but that's not a public knowledge.
Well, it is not, and that's the campaign we're running, is how do we empower citizens out there? And one of the reasons why they're developing resistance is because we are misusing antibiotics. We are using antibiotics in animal health. We are giving animals antibiotics. We are taking antibiotics. Our expectations when we have a cold or slightly unwell, the first thing you get is an antibiotics. The more we use the antibiotics, the less we make them effective. So this is not a scientific problem, it's a behavioral problem. We all have had this new society, just slightly unwell, where's the antibiotics? So I'm running a big campaign around that, which actually is going to bring in 3 pillars. One of the beauty about science, if we don't converge scientific disciplines, we're not going to achieve a greater outcome. Historically, I was trained as a physician, scientist. You were a physicist. Nowadays, the discoveries are the convergence of these different platforms coming together. So for this problem, this global problem, which Fleming discovered in 1928, we think that we should converge science with behavioral sciences, because we have to run a global campaign, a bit like climate. You know, climate change is not going to be fixed by technology. It's going to be fixed by our attitudes, by our behaviors. And it's the same with antibiotic resistance. And then finally, policy, and policy to enable that change happen. You know, how could we incentivize, for example, companies to develop new platforms when it comes to antimicrobials? Vaccines, for example, rather than giving people antibiotics. So that's the big program I'm dealing with, and I'm delighted to have my boss here is His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales, which is fantastic because it really takes us into a completely different sphere. And I'm very much looking forward, by the way, to my trip in Singapore in January, because many of my colleagues and friends and leadership in Singapore cares about antimicrobial resistance. And it's very exciting. So that's one thing that's keeping me busy. Another one, which AI, by the way, let's come back to AI. AI is going to have a huge role to play in antimicrobial resistance on a number of fronts. One, AI might be able to tell us, before I write the prescription to you, based on your genotype and phenotype, Doc, Mr. Sarkissian may develop resistance to this antibiotic. You should try another one. At the moment, we do it based on our knowledge. This will be assisted help. Next one will be, there are so many assets for decades in big pharma and labs in universities, which we've never really tested for their antimicrobial properties. AI could do that in a week. Screen all the assets we have and say, oh, there's a new antibiotics. And there's already, by the way, some very distinguished scientists in Harvard has come up with one discovery of antibiotics through AI. The third one was, which is the biggest challenge we have, you know, when we get a bit of a runny nose or a cough, we feel unwell, our immediate reaction, oh, I have the flu. That's nonsense. The flu is a very small part of what, it's some form of an infection. The sad fact is, majority of the time, we don't even know if it's a virus or a bacteria. And I promise you, 60–70% of them, even higher, some people say, it is a virus. So giving you antibiotic is a complete waste of time. Actually, in fact, it's harmful. So AI will be able to help us in that too. So let me move to the other area.
If I may just add a small remark here, I 100% agree with what you are saying. I think here it's important that even if we are careful, we don't take antibiotics when we think that we have a flu, or our doctor is wise enough saying that don't do this. We like or not, as you said, it's a behavioral problem. We eat chicken.
Yeah.
We eat fish.
Correct.
And all of this is there are a lot of companies are using antibiotics.
Absolutely.
And the purpose is not to make me or you healthier, it's just to make more money. Exactly like, as you said, it's like with the climate change. And this is very important that the public should understand and recognize.
Yeah.
And this is one of the reasons we started this project called Advance Tomorrow.
Yes.
And it's focusing on health, well-being, longevity, to also educate, and we'll be more than happy and honored to support what you are doing through Advanced Tomorrow. Because as a physicist and mathematician, when I think about artificial intelligence and the global fear, which is has become in huge disproportional size, compared with the real problem that we're facing, like with bacteria, I'm shocked that we don't see and we don't realize, as you were saying, that AI in this case is not a threat, and AI is our probably the main partner in order to find a solution in this or that form.
I couldn't agree more.
This is absolutely crucial and very important.
Absolutely. I think the point you make on animal health, by the way, 80% of cattle in the United States is fed on antibiotics. That is frightening, absolutely frightening. And by the way, when you feed cattle with antibiotics, they develop resistant bacteria, and when we eat them, and if the meat is not cooked enough, we infect ourselves. The other thing about climate, to be fair, this is all new knowledge. Cattle that are fed on antibiotics produce twice the amount of methane in the dunk than those who don't. So they're making a significant contribution to global warming. And on the reverse side, global warming is increasing the prevalence of infections globally.
Yeah.
Infection rate because it's warmer. Bacteria are surviving longer. So, yeah, we're in the same.
Of course, if anybody wants to be highly emotional on these issues, well, I did some research recently. Apparently, bacteria could survive for thousands and thousands of years.
Correct.
If they are frozen.
Correct.
So with the climate change, if the north or the south of this planet, ice will start melting.
Correct.
And the ground that was frozen, God knows, for millions of years, will start becoming sort of a livelier.
Yes.
Antibiotics or viruses that were on this planet, let's say 1 million years old, that we don't know them because they have, as you said, mutated and have become something else. The original ones will start coming up.
Correct.
So our problem in bacterial attack of the planet will double or triple because of the climate change as well.
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. They're all interlinked. Everything is interlinked. I mean, in our institute, we're also looking at climate change and mental health. We all think it's impacting our physical health, but there's plenty of evidence now that climate is having a significant impact on the mental health of adolescents and young people, which is difficult to explain, but it's there. It's absolutely clear evidence in supporting it. Let me come back to another area where AI may have. So I've had the fortune of also working with another Armenian, distinguished Armenian, Nubar Afayan, which I'm sure is your guest as well, where his vision on this, and I really love this, because in our system in the UK, we are a single payer system. So we love public health. And in my books, for example, I always said Queen Victoria was the best public health doctor ever in the history of humanity. Because with the simple 3 interventions of sanitation and cleanliness and sewage management, she actually saved so many lives. And that's the historical public health. But his thought, which is quite interesting, is with the amount of technology we have now, including AI, we might be able to come up with new diagnostics, what we call biomarkers, that could actually detect disease before you have symptoms. We all know the only time we interact with the health system is when we have a symptom. We have an ache, we have a cough, we've lost weight, or something more sinister. But the potential in the future with AI is the ability to detect disease before it becomes symptomatic. And then...
How do you do that?
Well, simple biomarker, because the cellular changes, by the way, are already happening, but not...
While you don't have the...
Before we have symptoms, before we have the weight loss. It takes 6 to 8 months before you get the symptoms of cancer, for example, of weight loss and others.
So the simple blood test with an AI becomes...
With AI, able to detect the disease at a much earlier stage. And the philosophy behind that is, if we are able to do that, then the next question is, could we actually reverse that trend? Shift the cells back to normality, for example. I mean, there are certain diseases we understand that within that frame of thinking, like there's something called pre-diabetes some people get. They're not diabetic, it's pre-diabetic state. And some people get treatment for that. But we're talking about every disease. Imagine, for example, 10 years before you develop dementia or Parkinson's, you're actually able to detect people and intervene to prevent them going into that pathway of deterioration and becoming symptomatic. And the philosophy of that is, once you're symptomatic, it might be a little bit late to reverse the trend.
Yeah.
And AI will be another amazing platform in detecting that. In Boston.
Well, in fact,
flagship pioneering,
in fact, I recently had the chance of looking of another UK company, which is a startup that are doing amazing work using physics, quantum mechanics,
Yeah.
as a tool of very much early detection of symptoms of Alzheimer's and dementia.
Yeah.
It's very different, the principle, than MRI, which is magnetic resonance. It's very different, but it can be used for our human purposes with the presence or with the help of artificial intelligence.
Correct.
So artificial intelligence helping to basically create a new innovation in technology, engineering, or even physics that in its turn will help us to understand early, as you said. Apparently, I didn't know, but if they find there's early cells of Alzheimer or in the brain of an individual, they can sort of treat that and prevent that. So we are, from some point of view, on the crossroad of new era of humanity. And this is, first of all, because of technology. 100 years ago, around 100 years ago, the world was blessed not only to have Fleming finding the penicillin, but also the greatest discoveries in quantum physics were done then, which has completely changed that and led to artificial intelligence. Of course, it had changed also the structure and fabric of our societies, because everybody now is in the half virtual, half material, living in virtual life. That has changed the whole structure, how you run business, how you run your life, how you run your health, or politics, democracy, and many other things. If one takes all of this together, we're living in a time which is the beginning of a new era in humanity. And if we are not careful, we can harm us. Or if we are smart enough, we will go to the next phase. And that's why Atom, together with National University of Singapore, we started this series of conferences. And I would like to share with you that we have decided to create a new award, the award which is called for a special award of Advanced Tomorrow, to those individuals that in their lifetime they have contributed to health, well-being, longevity, to life, through research or through activity in healthcare or medical or science, through their behavior and their contribution, be them philosophers or arts people, or through their political activity. If Her Majesty the Queen Victoria was alive, probably she will be the first recipient of this award, because what she did, as you said, was phenomenal. And our first recipient will be Henry Kissinger. And Dr. Kissinger, because just living his life, being very active until now, when he is more than 100 years ago, still is the wise voice to humanity, how to handle this or that conflict, this or that war. It's a huge contribution to humanity to believe that you can do that yourself. And another candidate for that is famous singer René Fleming. Because we will have a special panel how sort of things like music, art, philosophy, chess are having impact on our brain, and through brain to our whole body. And René, she's not only an ambassador of the WHO worldwide, but by her active presence and her music, she is making a contribution. And I'm happy to say that we have made the decision that another person that will be awarded, that we decided, is you.
Oh my God.
And we'll be very honored if you accept that. And that will include also, since you are already going to Singapore, will be on your next visit to Singapore to have a special talk to public or to university public, and that will honor you for that, and then a special ceremony and a special gala dinner in your honor, and you will be presented with that prize, which in fact has a form of a national flower of Singapore, which is the orchid.
Oh, fantastic! I'm stunned by this. That's extreme. I don't think what I've done to deserve this, but it's very generous of the organisers and you, President, for
well, the
for
thing is,
thinking of me. I'm not sure what I've done to deserve it.
well, we all know what you have done. Maybe you don't, but we know what you have done to deserve this, and that will be a fantastic example how someone basically being born in Iraq, if
Yes,
I remember,
yes,
and
yes, yes.
coming to Ireland for education, eventually becomes one of the leading doctors and movers of the future health and medicine. And I'm proud also to say that you are Armenian.
Thank you, President.
And I think it's a great honor for not only you, your family, but also the most important also for your nation as well.
Thank you, sir.
So I thank you for your contribution there. And at the end, I would like to hear a little bit more. You are running a big part of research also at Imperial College.
Yes.
Are there any new things that connected with other diseases that are not connected with bacteria or antibiotics that you are focusing these days?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm a surgeon at the end of the day, as you may know. My interest has been mostly cancer surgery, but the big technologies that have really transformed is robotics, imaging, sensing, and as you may know, we have the famous Hamlin Center of Robotics. We actually collaborate for a bit with Singapore, Hong Kong, and many other countries in Asia and beyond. And yeah, there are also some new tools, micro-robotics coming in. As we detect disease earlier, potentially we might be able to do not just what happened in the last 2 decades, which is converting a big incision to a small incision, which is what we call keyhole surgery. We're actually moving away from keyhole surgery into using normal orifice, where we can put a scope inside and do surgery through normal orifices without actually even cutting anything. So that's where technology is moving. As long as the early detection of disease, you might be able to do things with what we call incision-less surgery, which is fascinating and very, very exciting. We also have sensing devices, which are becoming very popular. Some of you may know, I mean, some are wearables, some of them are implantables, like technologies that we can measure response to treatment, like radiotherapy, for example. You know, at the moment we get one dose to any tumor. Now it's a much more intelligent way of actually guiding the radiotherapy based on the response at the local level, and we all have different responses. So that's very, very exciting. You know, science is always there to disrupt, and AI also comes in robotics, by the way, much more guiding certain tools and instruments based on an image guidance is much more, the sensitivity and specificity of moving that's significantly than a human steering it. So, you know, you can't keep up. Every day there is something new, and I think societies across the globe, the challenge now is how do you embrace innovation and drive it. The sad fact is there's still a lot of delays. There's still factors that stifle innovation in the world. And we need to be the guardians of that and make sure that we remove these obstacles. But, you know, innovation is what has transformed humanity over the last century, and I think next century is going to be even more exciting.
Well, that's exactly, we came back to what I was sharing with you, that I do believe that we're at the beginning of a new era, and at that new era, even I'm trying to call it, to attract attention, it's a new era of the world, which is the quantum era, because it's based on many things connected with the discoveries of quantum physics.
Correct.
And on one side, that quantum also means that we are not classical, we are not the old world, we are the new world.
Yeah.
And it's everywhere. I think we have to rethink everything in our life, starting how we exercise democracy. So at the end of the day, democracy is not only just going once in 5 years and voting.
Yes.
Today people are voting 5 times a day on their Facebook.
Correct.
So the institutions of democracy and social and political behavior have to start changing
Absolutely.
themselves. But one fascinating thing, because you are one of the fathers of bringing robotics into surgery, how far we are from the day when we will have a robot or robotic system that will be taught where is the problem, what is needed to be done, and then that robotic system will be left alone to do it on its own.
Yeah, I mean, the answer to that is already happening. Automation is what you're talking about. Automation of robotic instruments. In other words, bringing the intelligence underpinning the movements of the robotic arms, whatever it happens to be, whether it's by the way, they do it very well in car assembly lines. They do it in aircraft assembly lines. You can then ask, well, why they're doing it in surgically speaking. The answer is yes, the tools are there, the software is there, but there is, at the end of the day, has to be an accountable officer when it comes to surgery and you're operating. So, but these assisted devices that could be automated are there, and they do work, and they do extremely well. I mean, one of the ones that have really, there's been a fair bit of dissemination now, is what we call image-guided surgery. So you are in the MRI machine or the CT scan, you take an image, you know exactly where a lesion is, say a tiny little tumor or whatever happens to be. You also have the 3D dimensional mapping where that is. We currently, actually, in fact, use robotic arms that puts a needle under robotic guidance, under image guidance, which is much more specific than a human could do, directly to that pinpoint, and then the human will confirm it is, and then it will start, for example, delivering some thermal therapy to destroy that area of the lesion. So that's already happening, and you can see the advantages of that in areas like the brain, where obviously you want to be as minimalistic as you can, so you don't have what the military will call a serious collateral damage. In other words, you damage what's need to, you don't create much collateral damage to other areas, which is sadly what happens in wars. But in surgery, we're much more precise, because thanks to AI and image guidance.
I was thinking about this for 4 years when I saw first time a film about Mars rover.
Yeah.
I think because there's a delay of a signal
Yeah.
Going from us to Mars and backwards. And there are some periods of time, because of the rotation of the planet, that the central were losing control over the rover. But the reality is that they had the plan,
Yeah.
or the map of the place, and there was sort of elements of artificial intelligence. So while there was no connection with the Earth, the rover continued going, and if there was obstacle, the rover was making a decision to overcome or to bypass that problem. So why on earth we're doing with the rover on Mars, we cannot do that with our body?
I agree with you. I mean, to be fair, robots are very obedient. The problem we have are humans. They're the ones who go sideways, and you say, "Oh my God, what's going on here?" And so I think robots are very obedient. Even when the signal is lost, they seem to go in the right direction. My concern always is humanity is not that obedient sometimes, which is the right thing to do. But if you know a path, you should keep at the same path.
Yeah, I agree with that. And this was one of the reasons that after living all of these years not connected to medical, except being a patient, unfortunately, and I decided that maybe I will devote my life as well to something connected with health and medical, because when I started thinking about our lives, there's much more public attention to things like war, military, geopolitics of the regions, fear of artificial intelligence, I mean media and everything. And we have done phenomenal achievements in elementary particles, quantum physics, astrophysics, travel. But when you look at how much do we really know about the nearest object to us, which is our body, I'm a physicist, I'm not a physician, and my conclusion is that, relatively speaking, we don't spend enough time, effort, and money on researching our body, which
Yes.
at the end of the day is
Yes.
the source of life,
Yep.
which is the most important thing on this planet.
You're spot on, and I agree with you. I couldn't agree with you more. In actual fact, there is, if you go back to the last century, you will be amazed to hear this. Innovation in the last century, in healthcare innovation or health-related innovations, life sciences, doubled the life expectancy of mankind. I stand up and talk about this. There isn't anything in the world that has been able to double the life expectancy in the world except for science and biological sciences and the convergent sciences from it. You know, no politician has achieved that. Finance sector hasn't achieved that. It's been the health sciences, the life sciences that achieved it. And that's an amazing achievement. I'll give you another statistics. At the beginning of that century, a family would spend more money on funerals than on health because there's nothing to give in the beginning of the 1900s. Where we are today, we are spending on average globally somewhere between 10 to 15% of our GDP, 8 to 15% of GDP on health. And that's, people say that's a lot, but it's not. Just look at the life expectancy. I mean, there are some outliers, like the US spends 20%, 18 to 20%. I think the last century, though, what happened is we've added years to our lives. So life expectancy now is highest ever. I think the challenge of this century, and this is where robotics and artificial intelligence would be of great help, is how do we add life to these extended years? There's no point in extending your life and losing the quality of your life. So I think innovations in this century are even more exciting. So you could be 90 and actually have the same quality of life that I would have had at the time when you are 60 or 70. And that's really how do we eradicate some of the newer disease, which are not infectious disease, although we still will always have a threat of a pandemic of some sort, but how do we deal with declining degenerative mental disease like dementia, as you call it, or Parkinson's, whatever it happens to be. This is the generation in which we're going to add life to these years.
Yeah, and when you were saying about this 8 to 10%, that it looks huge,
Yeah.
but that in reality, when you look at what is the proportion or what is the size of that 8 or 10% that is used for fundamental research, I don't think it's huge. It's probably very, very small because I don't see it there.
Yeah.
Secondly, it's a crossroad.
Yeah.
And I think we have to redefine how do we do research in biophysics, in biochemistry, in biological sciences. I am a physicist and mathematician.
Yeah.
I am trained for a research which is basically based on complete logic,
Yeah.
mathematical, definite result, something that is based on laws of nature, something that you can describe in a formula,
Yes.
mathematical formula. And your research is sort of competition between theoretical physics or theoretical mechanics with the experimental one. So you predict things, then the experiment proves it, or experiment finds things that you cannot explain, and you use the logical base in order to explain that. The way I see in biology is much more complex because the systems are complex.
Correct.
And a lot is based on experiment and try, verify, rather than just having a theory. Because I haven't met theoretical biologist that is sitting there on a piece of paper like I used to do as a theoretical physicist and predicts something, then they can do that. And because of the complexity, because of the fact that you cannot have a formula describing a biological body. But now there is that tool, and that tool is artificial intelligence.
Absolutely.
So I think that's why even Fleming found penicillin, as far as I have read, by accident.
Completely.
By accident. So I think somehow there is accidental behavior, or there is a probability that you'll find it or not. While in mathematics and physics and physical sciences, it's more about very determined thing. Even if you go and change your philosophy from classical to quantum mechanics and logic, still it's very definite.
Yes.
You describe the probability,
Yeah.
but it's mathematically, laws are there. In biology, it's so complex that it's not a formula that you can find, but you have to have artificial intelligence coming in, analyzing all of that statistics, and basically the formula will be the result of this analysis of data.
Absolutely.
That's the new world that we're living.
Absolutely. I could not agree more with you. Absolutely.
So I think it's a theme that is endless. It's the theme that excites me now very much. And excites me that if I can do even a very small contribution of promoting science, biological life sciences, and importance of life, I will be very happy personally. And that's why I'm so happy having these discussions with you, Lord Darzi.
Thank you.
And there's so much that we can learn, and I personally can learn from you. And I'll be very happy to contribute in those endeavors that you and your colleagues are taking on. They are not easy ones, but they are the most important ones for humanity today. Because if we don't manage it well, it will backfire in a very bad way. Thank you again.
Thank you.
And hope to see you next year at our conference.
We'd love to.
In your person.
We'd love to. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.